In today's video, we'll be going over this 3D reel effect from Houston Kold.
So avoid this mistake if you want to grow to your first 10,000 followers.
This tutorial will give you a solid foundation of how to work with 3D scenes within After Effects. So in the future, if you want to do a 3D scene, you would know what to do. Before we get into that, if you want to go from being an okay editor, struggling to create high quality edits, and most importantly obtain high paying clients, to becoming an advanced editor and animator who is able to do Danko style, Iman Ghazi style, Vox style or Ali Abdaal style, as well as develop your own unique style, then join the waitlist for the Leverage Editor program and community. You will get access to the program where we'll be showing you the secrets behind all your favorite styles and unlocking your ability to earn more as a video editor and animator. You will also get access to our community of Leverage Editors where you will receive things like calls, challenges with cash prizes, coaches, myself included, opportunity to network with other editors and receive feedback on your work, and much more. The Leverage Editor program and community opens back on April 1st and you will only be able to enroll within 5 days period. Otherwise, we close it back for 1 to 2 months. And those who are currently on the waitlist will receive a special discount. So sign up now, link is in the description. And with that, let's get into the tutorial. So the first thing to do in After Effects is to create a new vertical composition. So go to Composition, New Composition, and make sure that this is the resolution of the composition, and let's set the frame rate to 30 frames per second. And now click OK. As you can see, I imported the raw video because this will be our reference. And of course you will have this raw video in the assets in the description, as well as every other asset that I will be using and a project file. So the first thing to do when creating this 3D viral Houston Kold reels is to start with creating a new camera and keep the settings at default and hit OK. Let's put it below the original layer. And right now I will also create a new null object, put this null object in 3D and parent link the camera to this null object. I do that just because I prefer to work with nulls and not with camera. Let's trim the composition to the length of the original video. So go right there, trim this, right click on that and click on trim comp to work area. Okay, so now we can start creating the first scene. So what you see right now on the screen, and we'll start with a background. So create a new solid, and the color doesn't matter for now. Let's call it background, put it below the camera and apply an effect called gradient ramp to this. Change the ramp shape to radial, put one point kinda here and the other point far away. And now change the black color to light gray color and the white color to darker gray color. Let's move this point a little to the left, this point a little closer, and let's make this one a little darker as well. And this is kind of how it looks in the original video, but right now you can see that there are also this kind of white lines in the background. So this is the thing with creating this Houston Kold reels, is that sometimes he uses a very random backgrounds, like very random overlays, and it's hard to find them. So my video will not look exactly as Houston's video, but it will be very similar. So I found this background on the internet, these white lines, and we'll make it so that it will look good on our background. And first of all, let's flip it horizontally. Now increase the scale, of course, so around minus 450 for me. Put it somewhere here, so there are these white lines on the screen, and let's decrease the opacity to 10%. And this way we've created these white lines in the background. Now remember to put almost all of the layers in 3D in this type of animation. Okay, now we can start creating the triangle, the exclamation mark and the text "so avoid." So looking at the original video, we can select a pen tool and draw a triangle that will be exactly the same shape as in the original video. Of course, set the stroke to white color and to 4 pixels, let's say for now, and remove the fill. Move this layer below the camera, but above the background. Put the anchor point in the middle by selecting this layer and using a shortcut Ctrl Alt and Home. And let's modify the path a little, like that I think is good. Okay, right now I will actually put the stroke on 5 pixels. And let's call this layer triangle. Put this layer in 3D and let's decrease the scale. Actually, before putting this in 3D, make sure that it's in the middle by using the align panel. You can align it so it's perfectly in the middle. And right now put this layer in 3D. I will make it bigger for now. So now we can create the texts. And the important thing is that we'll create the word "so" and the word "avoid" separately because we want to animate them separately. So first text layer will be "so" and the second text layer will be "avoid." Of course, make sure that you use capital letters. And the font that I'm using on them is called Alliance number 2 and font style is medium. Of course, you will have this font in the assets in the description. Make sure that the Y position is the same on both of the text layers, and now put it below the camera and also put it in 3D. And now the exclamation mark. So just create another text layer and type exclamation mark there with the same font, of course. Now we'll position these layers in 3D space. So right there, select 2 views, and your second view should be from top. And if it's not, you can select this view by just clicking on the gray area, and then right there you can change the angle of view. So open the position on the So Avoid text and push it closer to the viewer by just dragging the Z position. Right now the exclamation mark, put it in 3D of course, and make it closer to the viewer but behind the So Avoid text. And right now the triangle, move it closer to the viewer but behind the previous layers. So this should look like that. And I will actually increase the stroke on the triangle to 6 pixels. And of course set the stroke color to red. And the color of exclamation mark should also be red, so go to properties and here you can find the fill and change it to red. So the first scene is almost ready, but I actually think we have to put all of these layers a little up like that. Let's go back to one view. Okay, so the first scene is ready, but actually before making the transition, we'll create the second background. So the background that we will be transitioning to. So there are a few things in this second background. The whole background is white with a grayish tint. I think there is vignette applied and also there is white dots overlay on that. So let's start. Right click, create a new solid. Let's call it second background, and the color of that should be, as I said, like white with a really slight subtle gray tint. And another thing that you can see in the original video is that the white dots overlay is not applied in the middle. It's only applied in the corners and on the sides. So first let's import this overlay from asset folder. This is how it looks, and right now we'll change the rotation to 90 degrees and of course decrease the scale to make it fit the frame. And to make it only visible in the corners and sides, we'll have to create a matte layer. So create a new solid and the color doesn't matter. Go to shape tools and select ellipse tool. And now draw an ellipse something like this, a little bigger. Put the anchor point of that mask in the middle by using a shortcut Ctrl Alt and Home. And now align it so that it's in the center. Maybe let's stretch it vertically a little. Now click on the solid layer and click F. And this way you will open mask feather, and let's set it to like 150. Now put it below the camera, go to toggle switches modes and set the matte of the texture of the overlay to this new solid. And now invert this matte by clicking this box. Okay, it looks good, but the problem is that in the original video these dots are white and not dark. So we'll achieve that by applying an effect called change to color and set the from color to the color of the dot, and to color to white, and change the change option to hue, lightness and saturation. Okay, this is good. And right now we'll apply a vignette. So create a new adjustment layer and search for effect called vignette. And now tweak the settings, mainly the amount, so you get the look that you want. I would say 90 is pretty good. Now put this adjustment layer below the camera. Of course, put all of these layers in 3D. Let's disable the other layers to see clearly what is happening. And to make it look better, I will put white dots above the adjustment layer and now decrease the opacity on this layer to 15%. Let's rename this layer to matte. And now we can actually start creating transition between this scene, so first scene, to this white background. So find the moment of the transition, and I can see looking at the original video that it's this frame, so 29th frame. Let's mark this point, so Shift +4. And at this moment we want the new background to appear, but if you look closely you can see that the overlay is applied 2 frames before that. So select all of the layers creating this white background, maybe even let's label them as brown, so it will be easier to find them when looking at the timeline. And now trim the starts of them to this point and go 2 frames before that and set the starts of texture layer and the matte layer right there. And of course hide the matte layer. This way we have the white dots in the corners 2 frames before the actual transition. But right now they are kinda appearing out of nowhere. Like you see this frame, there is nothing on the screen, no dots. And 1 frame later all of them are here. So in order to avoid that, we'll actually keyframe the opacity on the texture layer. So keyframe the opacity here, go to the moment of transition and keyframe it here. On the moment of transition it should be set to 15%, and on the first keyframe let's set it to 0. Now on the first keyframe let's actually set it to 2% or maybe 4%. and now it looks better, it looks more natural. Okay, we can also trim all of the layers, creating the previous background to this moment, so to the moment of transition, and we can start animating that. So when we look at the original video, you can see that the text "so avoid" is appearing on the screen just by opacity keyframes. The exclamation mark will also animate by opacity keyframes, and the triangle is getting drawn, so let's start doing that. So at the start, go to the "so" text layer, click T to open the opacity, keyframe the opacity there, go like 10 frames ahead, and keyframe the opacity here again. On the first keyframe, set it to 0, and now we'll animate the text "avoid." So right there, let's keyframe the opacity on "avoid", go 10 frames ahead and keyframe it again. On the first keyframe, set it to 0. Now somewhere in this moment, let's also animate the exclamation mark. So open the opacity on exclamation mark, and this time go like 4 frames ahead, keyframe it there, and on the first keyframe, set it to 0. Let's put the avoid keyframes a little later. Okay, to animate the triangle being drawn, we have to open the drop down right there, go to add and add a trim paths, keyframe the end here, go like 10 frames ahead or maybe even 20 frames ahead, and keyframe the end here. If you look closely in the original video, you can see that actually the triangle is not getting fully drawn up until the very end of the transition. So even when the, wait, I will actually show you. You see, even when the triangle is really close, it is just right now finishing being drawn during the transition. Right now it's moving very fast and it's still not fully drawn. So at the first keyframe of the trim paths, set the end to 0, and at the second it should be at 100, but put the second keyframe actually like right before the transition, let's say here. Okay, also right now I see when I'm here on the timeline, we should hide the matte layer on the second background. So like that. Okay, in the original video it's getting drawn in the other direction, but I think it still looks good, so we don't have to change that. Right now, another thing that you can see in the original video is that right from the start, the whole screen is getting closer to the viewer. And to achieve this look, we'll use our null object that the camera is connected to. So go to this null object and click P, keyframe the position at the start and keyframe the position at the moment of the transition. And let's set the Z position to like 105. And as you can see this way, the whole screen is moving closer to the viewer. Right now we have to find the moment when all of the things from the first screen, so the triangle, exclamation mark and the text, start moving towards the screen. So let's enable the original video and find that moment. And I think it's here. So let's mark this point using Shift+5. You can see the mark there. And in this moment, keyframe the position on all of the layers creating the first scene. Go to the moment of transition, or actually one frame before that, so we'll be able to see everything. And keyframe the position here again. Now let's enable 2 views and let's move everything so that it's right on our face. So we'll do that by adjusting the Z position. So firstly, select the text "so avoid" and move it very close to the viewer. Also, we can adjust the X position, of course. We have to put it very close to the camera, so I would say this looks good. Right now, let's do the same with exclamation mark. Move it closer to the camera. But remember that still it must be behind the "so avoid" text. Okay, and now let's move the triangle. I think the triangle is actually good in this position, so like a little further away from the camera, but I think it's okay. And I will also put it a little lower, like that. Okay, let's see how it looks. It looks pretty good, but of course we'll have to smooth the keyframes. So let's go back to one view. And the other things that we have to adjust in this first animation is that the color of the triangle and exclamation mark is changing to white. And also we'll have to smooth the keyframes of the trim paths on triangle. So select these 2 keyframes of the end on trim paths from the triangle and click F9. Go to graph editor and make an is in animation by moving this handle to the left. Okay, actually let's change the position of this keyframe on trim paths and align it with the other keyframes of the position. Let's go back here and I will make even steeper is in animation, so move the first handle to the left also. Okay, this looks pretty good. Now we'll animate the colors on the triangle and exclamation mark. So apply an effect called change to color to the triangle layer and set the color here to red and the second color to white and change this option to hue, lightness and saturation. Now let's say in this moment keyframe the 2 option. Now click U on this layer to show you all of the keyframes and let's go right there, so like couple frames ahead, and keyframe the 2 option again. On the second keyframe the color 2 should be set to white and on the first keyframe it should be red. This way, as you can see, the color is changing, but I think we'll have to put the first keyframe earlier, so it takes more time for it to fully change the color. Okay, actually I think this color is starting to change right before the movement of this whole scene. So let's say one frame before this keyframe, so one frame before the big movement, we'll set the first keyframe here. Let's see how it looks right now. Yeah, so basically the color is changing during the transition, and right now apply the same effect in the same place to the exclamation mark. So select these two keyframes and paste them on the exclamation mark layer, but as you can see it's not changing, and this is because we have to go to effects on this layer and change this option to hue, lightness and saturation. Let's see this transition. Okay, it's good, but the keyframes must be smoothed. So select the position keyframes on one of these layers, click F9, go to graph editor, and I think to match what is happening in the original video we have to create a really subtle ease out animation, so move the first handle to the right. A little more, like that, let's see. Because at the start it's going pretty slowly and then it's speeding up. Right now select these two keyframes, and using a free plugin that you will have the link to in the description, I will copy the easing applied to these two keyframes and paste it on the other keyframes. The plugin is called EaseCopy. Right there click copy and paste it on the position keyframes of the remaining layers. Here and here, and on the triangle of course. And let's see how this transition looks right now. Okay, I think it's ready, so right now we can start creating the second screen of this whole animation. And also, if you are wondering why am I not applying glow right now, and it is because if we apply glow to everything right now, because you can see in the original video there is obviously glow on these layers, and if I apply this glow right now, this will make the whole composition very laggy right now. So I will apply the glow on all of the layers at the very end of the whole video. So now we can start creating the text "this mistake" with a red line below the word mistake, because this is how it looks in the original video, and we have to find the exact moment when these words start appearing, so it's this frame. And as you can see there is also opacity animation on the word mistake, so let's mark the moment when they start appearing, Shift 8 this time, and just create a new text layer. Of course, make sure to put these two text layers below the camera, and also make sure to make them 3D. And when creating this text, remember to create two text layers, one with the word this and one with the word mistake. And now of course position these two text layers in the right place. And also the font that I'm using on this one is Alliance number 2 light, and the font that I'm using on the mistake word is Alliance number 2 bold. And the word this appears on the screen out of nowhere, but the word mistake actually has an opacity keyframe. So let's click on this layer and click T to open the opacity, keyframe it here, go like 10 frames ahead for now, and keyframe it right there. On the first keyframe, let's set it to 0, or actually on the first keyframe right there, let's set it to 10. And now I also have to create a red line below this mistake word. So go up here to pen tool, or you can just click G and just draw a straight line like that. Set the stroke width to 6 and of course stroke color to red. Right now we can trim the start of this layer to this point and put it below the camera layer. Let's rename this layer to underline and put this layer in 3D of course. Go here, go to add and add a trim path. Go to trim paths and keyframe the end here. Go 10 frames ahead, keyframe the end here. And at the first keyframe set the end to 0%. And this way we've animated this line. Actually I see it's too long. Let's make it shorter. And let's put it a little lower, like that. Now let's solo the original layer by clicking this box here, and let's see when the next transition starts. So right there you can already see the rectangle on the side. So let's mark this point, Shift 5. And as you can see in the original video also, the screen is constantly zooming in, and we'll do that by again animating the camera. So go to the null layer that the camera is parented to. Let's go like here, so sometime later, and keyframe it there, and let's set it to 500. This way, as you can see, the screen is constantly zooming in, and this is what we wanted. Here you can check it on 2 views. So right now we can start animating the transition to the next screen, and the first thing that we'll do is create the text "if you wanna." As you can see in the original video, in this moment the text "if you wanna" is getting created on the screen by this upward moving animation. And of course there are 2 text layers, this one the main one and this one in the background. So it starts appearing right there on this frame. So let's mark this moment and let's create a new text layer and type "if you wanna" here. Let's trim the start of this layer to this point and put it below the camera, and let's put it in the right position, so I think here. Also, I will put the anchor point of this layer to the bottom and middle of this layer by using Motion Tools plugin. Now I will decrease the size of this font, maybe let's try 100. Put the anchor point in the middle by using a shortcut Ctrl Alt and Home. And using the Align panel, we'll align it so that it's in the middle. Okay, I'm back and I already created this text because actually it takes some time to get it perfectly. So this is how it looks. And right now I'm going to tell you how I created that. So first of all, the font that I'm using is obviously Alliance number 2 medium. The font size is 215 pixels, but the scale is decreased to 34%. And I created this text animation using another free plugin that is called Animation Composer. And if you install this plugin, you can go to Starter Presets and to Transition Text to Layers and to Animate Characters. And here you can find different animation presets, and the one that I used is called Overshoot Position and Scale, but I changed the settings. So I changed the Y position to 500. This way I increased the path that each letter has to travel before it is in its final position, because at default this option is at 100 I think, and this was way too little movement. And I also decreased the delay to 50, and this way there is less bounciness, because originally there is a lot of bounciness in this preset. And of course the fill is red. Hey, it's me from the future. One thing that I forgot to mention is that this point, TRIN, indicates when the animation on the text is finished. Right now we can start creating the rectangle right there that will make this whole transition. So select the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle like that. Put it right there. Of course, put it below the camera. And I already marked the point when this rectangle should start appearing. So it's here. Now let's make the original video visible and let's see how long this animation takes. As you can see at this moment, this rectangle takes up the whole width of the frame, but it is not yet scaled to take the whole length of the frame. So we'll put a mark right there. So Shift+6. Let's go to the first keyframe. Let's actually rename this layer Rectangle Transition. And overall, we'll not care about the fill of this rectangle later, but for now, let's set it to black just to be able to see it, and decrease the stroke to 0. Of course, put this layer in 3D, open the scale and the position keyframes, keyframe it there, and go to the second mark that we created and keyframe it there also. And on the second keyframe, move it like in the middle, and of course increase the scale. And also let's put the anchor point in the middle, so Ctrl Alt and Home. Put it so it's here, make it bigger, and actually move it a little up and make it even bigger. Let's see. Okay, at the first keyframe, let's put it a little out of the screen, like that. And actually also a little higher. And also, let's decrease the scale of that a little. To 85, let's say. Let's see right now. Okay, good. And now make the original layer visible again. And go to the moment when this rectangle takes up the whole screen. So right there. Put a mark here. So Shift+9. Let's hide the original video. And put keyframes there, and right now unlink the scale and only increase it vertically like that. And let's see how it looks right now. Okay, it's good. Of course we'll smooth these keyframes, but for me it looks pretty good right now. The only problem is that it takes up the whole screen at this moment, and it is because it is way too big at the last set of keyframes. So let's actually link the scale again and decrease it so that it just barely covers the whole screen. So like that, and let's see how it looks right now. Okay, this is really good. Of course, we'll smooth these keyframes later, but for now this is good. But now it's only a black rectangle, and this is not the background in the original video. But if you look in the original video, the background is the same background as at the start of the video, but it's red. So we can achieve that look by copying the background from the start. So let's copy these two layers and put them higher. Set the start to the point when the rectangle appears on the screen. Put them below the rectangle and go to toggle switches modes and set the matte of them to this rectangle. Right now, let's see how it looks. Yeah, you can see right now that it's transitioning to the screen from the start of the video. And now to make this background red, we'll create an adjustment layer. So right click, new adjustment layer. Put it below the camera and above both of the layers that create the background. Let's put the start of this layer here and apply an effect called Colorama. Right now it might look really weird, but also set the track matte of this adjustment layer to the rectangle. Go to output cycle on the Colorama options and change it from none to ramp red. Let's see right now. Yeah, perfect. Now it's red. So now we can actually smooth the keyframes on the rectangle to make it look better. So select all of these keyframes and click F9. go to graph editor, and the most important part is this scale animation. We'll have to make an is in right there by moving the handles on the second scale keyframe to the left. Okay, now it looks weird as you can see, so we have to also create an is in animation on the position. Let's see right now. Okay, now as you can see it kind of stops here. So to prevent that we have to move these keyframes from the ground, like that, even higher. On this keyframe, let's move the handle to the left, and on this scale also, move it to the left. Okay, now I think it looks really smooth. So I know this might be complicated and this graph looks weird, but it actually works, because as you can see in the animation, it looks really smooth. So you can copy what I just did here. So now we can create the second if you wanna text that will be in the background. Let's solo the original layer and let's find the moment when the second background text appears. So let's say even right there, you can see some shadows here, red shadows. And this is this text. If I move 2 frames ahead, you can see that this is here. So right there, and let's mark this point, Shift+4. And now I will actually create this text and get back to you when I create that, because I think this will take some time. Okay, so this is how it looks right now. As you can see right there, it's getting created. And right now, after rewatching this part of the video, I think that our rectangle transition layer at this moment should be a little lower, like that maybe, and maybe even make it a little bigger. So 395% in my case, like just a little, just slightly bigger. It still looks good. And I actually don't like the fact that this text is actually visible outside of this rectangle. So I will set the matte of this text to this rectangle, and this way it's only visible in this red screen. And how I created this text. So of course you have to play with the rotation and the position. So these are my values on the first keyframe, so you can just copy them. The most important parts are probably the Y rotation and the orientation, and of course the Z rotation here. And now on the second keyframe, it looks like that. So the orientation and the Y rotation didn't change, just the position. And of course, I also applied the same animation preset from the Animation Composer plugin that I applied to the first text, but I changed the settings because on this layer, I've set the frequency to 30, delay to 40, and position is the same, 500. But right now, I actually don't know why the first keyframe is here instead of at the start of this layer. So let's move this whole layer here. Yeah, now it looks better. And one more thing is that actually this whole screen will be the only screen that will have 3D disabled. So let's do that. Of course, except for this layer. And we do that only because we just don't need it. We just don't need 3D on these layers. And this just complicates things because we'll have to adjust the Z position. And as you can see, when we put it below the adjustment layer, it's red perfectly. And one more thing that I have to tell you, I've also put the Gaussian blur on this layer. So you can just select this layer, go to Effects and Presets and search for Gaussian blur here. Apply this blur and increase the blurriness to 27. I think this is fine. I did that because this is kind of how it looks in the original video. It's kind of blurred. I will also move the rectangle matte, so the rectangle transition below every layer here. I just prefer it this way. What I will also do is I will change the color of these 2 layers that create the background. So label them as fuchsia, let's say. This way it's pretty bright and I can see which layers are background layers. So do the same here. Okay, so now let's solo the original layer and let's find the moment of the next transition. So the next transition is basically this rectangle showing on a screen for 2 frames, and then the next text appears. So on this frame, we'll have to create the rectangle. So let's mark this point Shift 8 and go to Rectangle tool and draw a rectangle that will be kind of wide. And of course, it should cover the text underneath. Okay, this is too small. You can see that it's sticking out from the bottom here. Yeah, this is perfect. So let's now trim the start of this layer here, change the color of that to red and put it below the camera layer. Go 2 frames ahead and cut it in this moment and delete the rest of that. This rectangle is on the screen only for 2 frames. Let's call this rectangle red 2 frames. And also what we must do is animate the opacity on the if you wanna text, the main if you wanna text, because it should disappear when this rectangle is on the screen. So let's select this layer, click T, keyframe the opacity here, go 1 frame after that, keyframe the opacity again and set it to 0%. And after this rectangle is gone, we have to create a new text. So right click, create a new text and type go to your. Put this layer below the camera layer, trim the start of it here. Let's put the anchor point in the middle, so Ctrl Alt and Home. And using the align panel, align it so that it's in the middle. Actually, it is not supposed to be in the middle, but it is supposed to be inside of this rectangle. So let's make the rectangle layer a little longer for now and adjust the position so that it fits in this rectangle. So this is good. Trim the rectangle again and change the color of this layer to white. Set the font on that text layer to Alliance number 2 and the type medium. Let's check again. Yeah, it's correct. Let's see how it looks. Okay, one more thing is that when this rectangle appears, the background text should also disappear. So let's trim the end of that layer here and let's see how it looks. Okay, yeah, it looks perfect. Now let's solo the original layer again and let's see what is next. And the next scene is basically the last animation of this whole video, but it might be the hardest because we have to create the whole Instagram profile layout. So I don't recommend getting any asset from the internet with the Instagram profile, especially because it will be impossible to find a profile that looks exactly like this. So we'll create this layout by ourselves. So just click here to create a new composition and let's call it IG layout. And I will start creating this layout here and I think I will get back to you when I'm done because it will take some time. Okay, this is how it looks right now. In a moment I will tell you everything that I created here and how I did that. But for now I wanted to tell you that 2 of the layers from this background will be imported. So one will be the white arrow and the other will be this graphic saying this account is private. You will of course have these graphics in the asset folder, but what I wanted to tell you is that, for example, this graphic, it's not white, but we'll apply an effect called change to color, set the from color to this gray color and change the option to hue, lightness and saturation. And this way it's white. And this arrow, we have to right click on that, go to transform and flip it horizontally, decrease the scale so it matches with everything else in the background and put it in this place. And right now also increase the scale of that, make it a little bigger. Let's align it to the center and let's actually put it higher. This is not how it looks in reality, but we don't care about that. We just want to create a good animation. So right now I will tell you everything that is created here. The first layer, so the background layer, this is just a rounded rectangle that is aligned to the middle, to the center, and the fill is dark gray. Now the text, Instagram user. So basically this is just a text layer and the font that I used is Free Sans and the version is bold. I didn't use the Alliance number 2 font because I don't think it looks good in this setup. Now this free shape layers, these are basically ellipses. Right now, this layer, this is another ellipse, but on this one, I've put the gradient ramp effect and I've set the colors to black and this gray. You can copy the code, of course, if you want. And the black is just fully black. And this way you create the gradient on this ellipse. Right now, this is just a text layer. Exactly the same. You can see the properties here. So Free Sans, bold, and the scale is 16. And I will also show you the scale on this one. It's 23. Right now, this one, again, the same, Free Sans and version bold, and the scale is 16. And I already also put the glow on that. So I am using a deep glow. This is a paid plugin. But if you don't have that, you can just use a standard glow from After Effects. Now here the same, this is just 10K with deep glow and the same font, following the same. Here again the same, but the scale is 21. Here this is just a rounded rectangle that I created and the fill is this color. You can of course copy that. And one more thing that was invisible for now, but I made it visible, is this line. This line was created with a pen tool and I've set the stroke to red color and 54 pixels and I removed the fill. So this is basically behind the 10K. And also I already applied deep glow on that, so you can copy the settings. And another thing that you might have noticed is that all of the layers in the background have blur applied, because I think this is kind of how it looks in the original video. So I used Gaussian blur with the blurriness set to 7, and right now I have to also apply it to these 2 graphics that I just imported. Let's apply it, let's put it at the top. And also to the white arrow. But on the white arrow, I think I will increase the blurriness, let's say to 20. Yeah, that's pretty good. So this is how my IG layout looks. I created that without any model layer. I was just doing everything by myself. But if you want, you can also find the IG profile template and just copy what is in the template in exactly the same proportions. So right now with the IG layout created, let's go to project right there and we can import that composition here and put it below the camera, of course, and also put it in 3D, as well as the go to your text. Okay, when looking through the whole video and also comparing it to the original video, I found one mistake, and it's that right there, this rectangle at the start should be gray. It should not be red right from the start. So go to adjustment layer right there, open the opacity, and keyframe the opacity on that. And in the moment of the second set of keyframes on the rectangle mat, so right there, this set of keyframes, let's put the opacity keyframe, and it should be at 100% in this moment, but at the start put it at 0. And this way you can see at the start it's gray and it's changing color to red. We can actually even put the second keyframe a little later. And this is one thing that I wanted to adjust, but also another thing is that we have to apply motion blur to some layers. So I want to apply motion blur to all of these layers. So these 4 layers. Now motion blur should be on this rectangle. So here rectangle transition, put motion blur on that, and also put motion blur on these 2 layers. And I want to apply motion blur to the IG layout also. And also apply motion blur to these 2 text layers. So 2 text layers saying if you wanna. This one and this one. And actually I see right now, let's delay the finish of the animation of the background text if you wanna. So this point we have to move it further away, not that much of course. Okay, now we can actually animate this Instagram layout. So for now let's solo the original video layer and let's see when is the first frame that this layout appears on the screen. And I think it's here. You can see the small part of that here. So let's mark this point. Shift +5, and let's trim this composition, trim the start of it to this point. Of course, put it in 3D. I will also maybe put the red rectangle for 2 frames in 3D also. Okay, but now when looking at this animation back, I can see that there is a problem. And the problem is that this text is much bigger than this text. And why is that? This text is 215 size there. So let's set it to 215 size there. And here it's 34%, so let's set it to 34 here. And let's use the align panel. Okay, actually let's disable 3D on that for now. And with this layer selected, go to align panel and align it so that it's in the center. And now I can enable the 3D again. And let's see how it looks right now. Okay, it matches much better. So now we can start animating this. The IG layout. So open the position, scale and rotation keyframes on that. And I just like to keyframe everything there. In the original video, let's find the moment when this Instagram is fully animated. So I think it is getting animated up until the very end of this video. Of course, at the start, it's much faster. So let's put the keyframes at the very end. And let's start working with that. So first of all, I will decrease the scale. Of course, put it to the right. Put it closer to the viewer, so decrease the Z. Okay, now I also see at this frame you can see we have to make these 2 background layers longer, basically up until the end of the video. And now I will actually animate this layout coming on the screen and I will get back to you when I'm finished. Okay, this is how it looks right now. Okay, yeah, I think it looks good. So I can show you my values on the keyframes. So on this set of keyframes, these are the values. So basically I changed everything except for the orientation. Then here I made another set of keyframes. Because if I delete these keyframes, it will not actually look good during this moment. Because in this moment, we want this Instagram layout to look kind of like that. But if I actually delete these keyframes, I can even show you. It is not even visible on the screen, but we want it visible. And it's much harder to animate with just 2 sets of keyframes. So I just decided to create another set of keyframes. So these are the settings on the first set of keyframes. These are the settings on the second set of keyframes. And these are the settings on the third set of keyframes. Now another thing that we have to do is to make sure that this text, so go to your, actually disappears kinda in this moment. Because if we don't make this text disappear, then as you can see later, it's visible above the Instagram profile. Of course, we could also change the Z position on this layer to put it far away from the viewer. But I think easier method will be to just delete this layer entirely. So right there, I would say when it's not visible, we'll cut this in this place and delete the rest of that layer. And let's see right now. Yeah, as you can see now it's not visible. Let's actually put the third set of keyframes, the last set of keyframes at the very end. Okay, and one thing that you can see in the original video is that this red line behind the 10K text is actually animated. with the trim puffs. So we can do that by just going inside of this composition. But first we have to check when do we want this animation to start. So let's say we want it a little different than in the original video, because we want it to start when this is already on the screen. So let's say we will start there. So when your playhead is in this position, go inside of this composition, go to line 10K, open it here, and I already have the trim puffs here because I already figured that out, and now I wanted to tell you that. And keyframe the end here, go 10 frames ahead and keyframe the end here again. At the first keyframe, set it to 0, and now it's animated, as you can see. And another thing that you can see is missing in my video, except of course for the text that we'll create in a moment, is that this whole IG layout is actually kinda reddish, it's red. And the second thing is that you can see that there is this shine going from right to left on this IG profile. So right now we'll make these two things. We'll make this red and we'll create this shine. So go inside of this IG composition, and we want to make everything except for these 3 layers. So 10K, followers, and the line behind the 10K. We want to make everything except for that more red. So just create a new adjustment layer, put it below these 3 layers, and apply an effect called colorama here, and change the output cycle to ramp red. It's way too red for now. So go inside this composition and we'll change the option blend with original on the colorama effect, and we'll set that to 40%. This way it's less red. As you can see, if you set it to more percentage, then it's much less red. And if you set it to 0, it's really red. So I will set it to 40%. Let's go to original composition. Yeah, and I think now it's matching much better. And we don't want to put that on these 3 layers because we want them to really stand out. Okay, now we'll create this shine effect. So go to the moment when you want this effect to start. I would say we have to be almost fully on the screen. So let's say right there. Go inside of this composition, and this is really easy to create. You just have to select rectangle tool, and with no layer selected, let's draw a rectangle like that. It has to be pretty thin. Now change the color of that rectangle to white. I will make it even thinner. Let's call this layer shine. Let's put it below the adjustment layer. Open the rotation and rotate it as you see fit. I would say this will look pretty good. And right now, set the track matte of this layer to the background layer and make the background visible, of course. Cut this layer in this moment. And right now, just open the position, keyframe the position there, and let's go 20 frames ahead. Keyframe the position here and move it like that. Okay, this is good, but to make it more realistic and add more sauce to that, we'll have to apply Gaussian blur on that. That's the first effect, and set it to some big value. I will set it to 100 for now, and I will also decrease the opacity of that to a really low value. I would say 7%. Let's see. Yeah, and right now it looks similar to the original video. You can see this shine, but it's not overwhelming. And actually I think it's too wide. I will make it a little thinner. Yeah, now I've created this shine, and let's see how it looks in the original video. Yeah, it looks really good. So now really the last thing is to create the text first 10,000 followers. So let's solo the original layer and find the moment when this text starts appearing. So it's right there. Let's mark this with Shift 4 and create a new text layer. And we'll have to create 3 separate text layers. One with the word first, one with 10K, and one with followers. Of course, put it below the camera, set the start of that layer here, and put it in 3D space. And of course, one more thing, keep it below the IG layout layer. For now, I will not be adjusting the position because I think, again, I will have to spend some time on making it look good. So for now, I will just find the moments when all of these layers should start appearing. So let's find the moment when the 10K starts appearing, and it's right there. Let's put a mark here, Shift+7. And now let's find the moment of the text followers appearing. And it's right there. Both of the text layers 10K and followers appear on the screen by just opacity animation, and the text first appears by the position animation. So let's mark this moment when the text followers appears, Shift+6. And right now I will create these 3 text layers. Of course, one more thing is that you have to make sure that everything there is in capital letters. So if it's not in capital letters right now, you can just select the layer, go to the properties panel, and right there click on that, and this will change it so that it's in capital letters. And do that on all of these layers. And right now the font that I will be using will be Alliance number 2 bold. So let's set it on all of these layers. And now I will get back to you when I actually create this animation, because this will be a lot of tweaking with different keyframes, and I will just get back to you with a final result. Okay, this is how it looks. And I think it's pretty good. So I can show you the keyframes on these layers. They are here. So let's go over them. At the first keyframe, so the first word, at the starting position it should look something like this, and these are my settings. I only animated the position and scale, and at the last keyframe it should look like that. You can copy them, of course, but I actually encourage you to do it yourself, to actually practice positioning these keyframes in 3D by yourself. And I will show you how it looks in a graph editor. So select them, go here, and this is just an is in animation, but it's pretty hard is in. So I moved the second handle to the left, but I also moved the first handle also to the left. So it's a pretty steep is in animation. So when it comes to scale, I just copied the same keyframes from the first text layer. And as you can see, they're in the same places, even though this text layer at the start is not even visible yet. But on this layer, I also animated the opacity starting at 10% and finishing at 100. And of course the position, here it is on the first keyframe and here it is on the second. So with this position animation, you just really have to make sure that it's aligning well with the text first. So it's going the same pace. And right now the last text layer, which is red followers, at the first set of keyframes, these are the values. And also there is opacity animation on that, going from 10 to 100. And on the second keyframe, these are the values. And when comparing to the original video, I think I will also change the position of this Instagram profile a little. So click U on this layer and I will change the X rotation, make it a little more rotated, and also the Y rotation. Like that. Also, I will make it a little bigger, so let's say 95, and I will put it a little lower, like that. Actually, the Y rotation put it a little less rotated. Let's see right now. Yeah, I believe it's really good. Of course, it's not the same as in the original video, but it still looks damn good. Let's maybe actually on this last keyframe I will also change the Z rotation, make it a little more rotated, like -9, and also put it a little higher so it covers the followers text a little more, something like that. The font that I'm using is also different than the font from the original video, so it's hard to replicate it perfectly. When I look back at this, I think our shine is too fast, so we have to go inside of this layer, click U on the shine layer and push this keyframe later, so it takes more time for the shine to get fully animated. Okay, I think this looks really good. So the animation is almost fully done, almost finished. We just have to apply glow to almost everything right now. So just let's go right from the start and see where we want to apply the glow. So we want to apply the glow to all of these elements right there. So as I said, I will be using Deep Glow. And if you have the Deep Glow plugin, the settings that I will be using will be radius on 300 and exposure on 0.3. On most of the layers this will be my glow, but I will also show you, if you don't have a deep glow, you can just search for normal glow, apply it on this layer and just play with these three options to get the look that you want. But for now I will delete this because I will be using deep glow. Okay, so I will just keep applying glow to everything and I will be back when I do that. Okay, so when applying this deep glow to all of the layers, I actually decided to also apply it to the profile layer, IG profile layer, because it just makes it look a lot better. Like I will show you, without deep glow, it looks like that. And with deep glow, it looks just much more interesting. And I think it matches the whole style much more. But of course, on that layer, I made this glow more subtle. I decreased the radius and the exposure. And maybe even I will decrease it even more. And let's now see how the whole animation looks. I will decrease the resolution because it will be laggy probably. Yeah, I think it looks really good. So now this is everything in this tutorial. If you want to learn how to edit in other popular styles of editing, then make sure to sign up to the waitlist in the description to join Leverage Editor program and community. And if you sign up to the waitlist before April 1st, then you will get a special discount. So check the link in the description. And with that, thank you guys for watching and see you in the next video.